Here's how you know how much I like and will miss Megan. I relinquished the final spot of our show to her. That's normally my ego spot as sort of co-founder of the Nerdaissance and my overly large ego. I go last, and Megan will be going last. So your next performer is me, Joe Harvey. Just to give you a little bit of insight into the process, whenever somebody new starts doing this, I never give anybody rules. I would never ever dream of giving anybody rules for doing something this silly and stupid. But I generally tend to go with like choose your piece should be funny even if people don't know the source material that you're fan fictioning, things like that. And I always say try and pick a fandom or something that at least 75% of your audience will know, and I kind of doubt whether this is the thing. Raise your hand. Downton Abbey. Is anybody as big a fan as I am? Raise your hand if you watch Downton Abbey.
Raise your hand if you know what Downton Abbey is.
Bloody fucking hell. Okay, I broke my own rule. Does anybody even know what Downton Abbey is? Okay. Much better. At least as long as we all have a rough idea of what Downton Abbey is, we'll be good. Forgive me for this. I wrote half of this while I had a concussion, and I'm a little tipsy right now, so we'll see how this goes. Ladies and gentlemen, Downton Grabby. Dawn breaks over the meticulously maintained grounds of Downton Abbey. The handful of rich white people were still asleep as dozens of poor white people rushed around like crazy, doing an insane amount of work to pamper their birthrighteous overlords. Down in the kitchens, Mrs. Patmore was barking orders at sweet, innocent Daisy and the rest of the kitchen staff, while the footmen, Thomas and William, sat at the long staff table reading the morning newspaper. That's something that happens often during the show. Thomas said something cunty, and everyone just let him. Seriously, Thomas frequently says things that would make a pacifist like Gandhi take a shiv to his pancreas. But in this weird-ass manor home, everyone just lets him get away with it. It was at this point that I was going to make up something dirty about Mr. Bates and pretty maid Anna, but their love is precious and will not be mocked or sullied by anyone or anything as long as I have something to say about it.
Let's do it next time.
All right. In the back room, Mrs. Hughes was giving Mr. Carson just the sloppiest of blowjibbers. Because he was tense, as always, and he told her it would be right and proper to do. If you were to ask the inhabitants of Downton Abbey, being right and proper is the only thing that has ever been important to anyone ever. The show takes place in a British manor house in the 19-teens, so it's like very proper and British. Without warning, Mr. Carson issued a deep baritone grunt, indicating that despite his advanced age and stress level, that he had indeed managed to issue his seed down a surprised Mrs. Hughes's gob. Thank you. A quick pat on the head and a "that'll do" with no direct eye contact was her reward for a job well done. Carson confidently strode out into the hallway and bellowed for all within earshot to hear, "Well, what are you waiting for? Let's go take care of the Granthams." Upstairs, Lady Mary awoke to fresh-cut flowers beside her bed, warm scones filling the air with a sweet, buttery smell, and her clothes for the day freshly pressed and on her dressing table. To the untrained eye, Lady Mary was a woman on vacation at a luxurious spa, or someone who liked to pamper themselves by doing a great amount of work the night before to ensure that she was awakened as pleasantly as possible. Yet the reality was that simply because she was expelled from the correct womb, she was deemed deserving of this treatment every morning of her life. Mary, an incredibly fit specimen of a woman in her early 20s, stretched and yawned as she got out of bed and took a bite of scone. She was doing whatever the 19-teens version of washing up was when Maid Gwen walked into the room with fresh linens because God forbid this rich twat sleep on the same sheets 2 nights in a row. "Oh my goodness, I beg your pardon, Lady Mary. I thought you were still asleep. You don't, okay, nobody watches the show. Gwen is a maid in season 1 and is played by the redhead that plays Ygritte on Game of Thrones. That super, super hot redheaded girl, Game of Thrones, anybody agree? You know nothing Jon Snow, that girl.
Yeah!
Yes.
Oh! Now she
Played by
knows.
Shrek.
Now she knows. This kills the boner.
Not mine.
And now I gotta show. Oh my goodness. I beg your pardon, Lady Mary. I thought you were still asleep, Gwen said in a Scottish brogue thicker than Liam Neeson's cock. Oh, it's quite all right, Gwen, Lady Mary said, as if some impropriety had actually occurred. As Gwen laid the linens out on Mary's bed, she noticed a small wet spot in the center of the used sheets, and she knew that Lady Mary had had a nice dream about some stuffy, paper-skinned British gentleman and had committed an impropriety in her bed. I'm missing a page. Haley?
Freestyle.
You can constantly
Listen.
staple them.
You can't blame Doc Brown for stealing some pages about time, okay? Innocent. Innocent of them charges.
All right, fuck it. Improv time. Paper-skinned British gentleman, blah-biddy-blue, had committed an impropriety in her bed during the night. Oh, Lady Mary, it looks like you've committed an impropriety in your bed during the night. They fuck. How about that? There was a bit about Maid Gwen clocking in at Lady Mary's Georgia O'Keeffe lady parts. And they fucked. Like ladies.
Very prim and proper.
Meanwhile, across the manor, in the library, Lord Grantham was pondering how retarded World War I was about to be. Get back here. A moderately important Archduke had yet to be assassinated by Yugoslavian nationalists, so for now the powers of Europe were just staring at each other like a couple of Ed Hardy douchebags at a bar, on the cusp of getting into a fist fight over the drunk girl in the corner. Except in this case, the drunk girl was Serbia, and the fist fight would crumble 4 of the era's most powerful empires. Lord Grantham was banging his head on his ornate mahogany desk, thinking about how the 2 men responsible for this shitfuck, King George V of England and Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, were actually first cousins. World War I was really just a fight between 2 first cousins. It was fucking retarded.
Idiots.
He was about to send a sternly worded letter, the only scolding a proper British gentleman knows, when Lady Cora walked in and placed her hand on his shoulder. He placed his hand on hers, but pulled back suddenly and apologized. Oh dear, I'm terribly sorry for being so forward outside of our marital bed, Cora. They're very British. Cora, American-born and rich as fuck, had had enough of her lord's Hugh Grant movie approach to seduction and pulled him to his feet by his probably unreasonably priced tie. She pushed him briskly against the wall and shoved him down to his knees head first and threw at least 4 of the 6 layers of skirt or dress or whatever over him and thrust her overgrown thatch of Elizabeth McGovern pubic mound into his handsome Hugh Bonneville. I like you guys. Once her baser desires had been met with a near drowning sound from Lord Grantham and a triumphant howl from Lady Cora, she helped him back up, slapped his face, and in a sweet soprano voice plainly said, "Tonight you're gonna plant an heir in me, or I'm gonna go fuck Mr. Carson on the regs." How inappropriate, was all the English lord could mutter. Lady Edith was busy moping in like a veranda or something rich people have. When her gran, the Dowager Countess, played by Maggie Smith, Professor McGonagall from Harry Potter. Yeah. The Dowager Countess walked by and asked, "My dear, why is the ugly duckling of our high-born family acting so inappropriately in the veranda or some such? And gave a knowing look as she is apt to do in every scene she's in, because acting. Edith was constantly being reminded that she was the ugly duckling of the Grantham family, even though nobody with eyeballs would ever think this girl was ugly, so let's just call her TV ugly. Edith mopily replied, "Well, Gran, I just don't know my place here at Downton. Literally nobody likes me. Every man that comes through here has eyes for Mary, and because this is the 19 teens, there's not a single dildo to be had in the entire estate. Also, washing machines with a spin cycle won't be invented until 1937, so my ghoulie bits are gathering more dust than our class is concerned for anything other than making sure our wealth stays only with us." Lady Edith finished, and then realized that the Dowager Countess had walked away, uninterested in the middle of Edith's tirade. Alone she moped, when suddenly a whooshing, like whistling, kind of pulsating, kind of hard to describe noise filled the air, and before her a strange blue box materialized out of nowhere. Edith gaped at what was happening in front of her, when the door opened and a tall, handsome man in a snappy blue suit and a brown trench coat stuck his head out of the door, looked around, noticed Edith in a charming Scottish accent, said, "Ah, back in a tick, love," before ducking his head back into the box. Her face flushed with excitement, her average bosom beaded with sweat. She beamed a huge Anglo-Saxon toothed smile at the box as she fixed her hair and adjusted her dress. Had her dreams finally come true? Would this man take her on a myriad of wonderful and dangerous adventures? Could he stand her for more than 10 minutes when nobody else seemed capable of the task? The door was flung open and the man poked his head out. He looked around as if Edith would have somehow moved and seemed surprised to find her again. He's quirky. With a big smile, he asked, "What's your name, dear?" Edith, she replied, standing up in anticipation of his asking her to run away with him. She was startled when he tossed her something. She caught it and looked down at her hand, finding a device that looked like a plastic banana with an odd little rabbit on top of it. The man gave her a wink and jubilantly said, "Nice to meet you, Edith. Now, fuck for your life!" Edith Dr. Hoodcup, thank you. And slammed the door shut. Are you okay?
Yes.
Was I too funny?
You broke it.
Yes.
As the whooshing, whistling, kind of pulsating noise came again and the box started to disappear, Edith looked down at the contraption that was capable of giving her the pleasure that she so desired, and with a sly grin skulked back into the, let's just call it a veranda. I don't know what that little thing is called. Wrapping up this overly long story, what would have been an overly long story if I had my other page, Lady Cora's maid O'Brien and her evil sidekick Thomas were sharing a smoke and being cunts as per usual. O'Brien, a woman in the throes of menopause, was wildly hormonal at the moment, and taking the opportunity, grabbed Thomas by his fancy lapels and dragged him into the carriage house. Thomas was shocked, but not wanting to expose his potentially embarrassing sexuality, he suffered the indignity of not only being gay in the 19 teens, but gay and British in the 19 teens. He went along with it. Her groping, open-mouthed kisses had the warmth and softness of French kissing a stale box of Triscuits. Her hands felt like he was being rubbed by the hands of a really hard-working mummy. Still going along with the charade, Thomas let her lay him down on a pile of hay in the nearest stall. Side note, in romance novels and period dramas, we often see two people doing it in a pile of hay in a horse stall. And while this may seem on the surface to be a passionate interlude partaken by two forbidden lovers, or those who just succumb to their wild desires so completely that they just can't make it to a more suitable environment for lovemaking, in reality, these people are just plain gross. Horses eat, sleep, piss, and shit on that hay. Salmonella and ringworm aside, you are susceptible to Campylobacteria, Cryptosporidium parvum, and Leptospira. Especially in the time periods most of these ribald stories take place. The antibiotics that would save you from these deadly bacteria haven't been invented. So fuck away, young lovers. You are fucking disgusting. Honestly. Standing over him in the stall, O'Brien lifted her many skirts to properly mount her much younger and barely consensual partner. Gazing at her vagina, Thomas became instantly ill. He didn't become ill because he was gay and about to have sex with a woman. He became ill because did you honestly expect this horrible swamp witch of a woman to have a nice or even slightly below average vagina? Wiping the chalky bile from his lips. That's what got you? Okay. Wiping the chalky bile from his lips, Thomas indignantly declared, Jesus, O'Brien, your twat looks like a raw chicken that got run over by a tank tread. Sorry. I am as the good Lord made me. I am as the good Lord made me, O'Brien said in a huff before tucking her labia back into her bloomers and storming off. I had a concussion while I wrote half of this. You don't even know. I was so like, stop. Okay, quick aside before I finish this up. There's only one paragraph to go. The whole World War I thing, I literally had a concussion when I wrote it. I wrote seriously like a 2.5-page jag. Just, World War I was fucking bullshit. And then I go back to edit this like a couple weeks ago. I was like, what did I? I was so angry. So angry. Okay. O'Brien said in a huff before tucking her labia back into her bloomers and storming off. Thomas lit up a cigarette and jerked off thinking about archaeologist Howard Carter, the man who discovered the tomb of King Tutankhamun in 1922. Sam. That was way more fucked up than I thought it was going to be. The missing page part was interesting.